Hello, everyone. Welcome back to VRIC Media, your most trusted voice in metals and mining. I'm your host, Darrell Thomas, and today we have the pleasure of bringing back on one of our favorite guests, Lynette Zang of Zang International. How you doing today, Lynette?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me back. I love being here.
Yes, indeed. And we love just getting your insights on the gold and silver. Obviously, there's a market for it, and there's market moves, especially when people are looking at the price measured in dollars, which is kind of a hard thing to separate, in the psychology of being a buyer of money, when it's measured in a current fiat currency. And so gold and silver has been under some pressure recently and such. And so what are kind of some of your thoughts on this recent movement and the price measured in dollars?
Gosh, I have so many thoughts on it. But I will say that Wall Street has turned everything into a big speculation. So when we had that massive run up, that was speculative trading in there. Now we've got these mega IPOs coming out, and it looks like all the rest of the markets are struggling as perhaps entities are trying to accumulate some cash to go into these mega IPOs that are coming down the pike. But all of this and the level of volatility is really an indication of where we are and the breakdown in the global monetary system. Because you've got to keep in mind, a rising gold price is an indication of a failing currency. And they do use price action to get adoption or to push people away. If I had my druthers, then people would understand that what they're actually looking at are contracts, trading contracts. Because unlike things like stocks or bonds or currencies that are used in one area, gold is used in 33 different global sectors of the global economy. And silver is used in 36 different sectors of the global economy. And that, if I could help people understand that you cannot base your choices on manipulated contracts. Those are simply designed either for a pickup in cash because that's their job. Banks make most of their money by trading, not by buying and holding. But for the individual, this is about maintaining your purchasing power, which is absolutely not what governments or central banks or corporations want you to do. Yeah. That was the whole plan that started this thing. And so when I'm looking at the price action, I absolutely know Bitcoin was allowed to run because they want adoption of the digital system. And the more that they can make things look normal or the same, that's their goal. I mean, they know how to do this. They even admit they know how to do this. In the beginning, you had a $20 1 ounce gold coin, and then they came up with gold certificates because, wow, this is so much more convenient than this is. And it's got a little gold thing there. But at the same time that they did that, they did this, which is a Federal Reserve note, which is corporate debt. And look at how much alike the two bills look. And they rode together for 20 years. They were used in the economy interchangeably because they all had a stated value. So people got used to it. And they put value in dollars. But what they don't realize historically, that everything was valued in terms of ounces of gold and silver historically, not in terms of dollars. Dollar has no value because it has market in one place. So really, what is happening today, because when these two went away, this one was still there, and they go, oh, nothing has changed. They're doing the same thing with the digital system. And it doesn't matter that cryptocurrencies seem to be in some kind of winter, blah, blah, blah. They haven't had their test yet. This may be it, it may not be it. I don't know yet. But what I do know is that regardless of how the public feels about it, the corporations are moving quite rapidly to build this infrastructure right in front of our faces, but we don't realize it because it's not visible yet. And when I look at how they set the system up without the public realizing it, after they took the power away, that's really when they flooded the system, when there was nothing that you or I could do about it. And that's what's happening today. This is not different. So what's happening in the metals markets? Number one, what you're looking at is you are not looking at the whole market. You're looking at the paper or the digital market. And that is cheaply and easily manipulated and has been forever.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's definitely a good way to frame that, especially with, I mean, it's the truth, but to frame it in the way of like, you're looking at contracts, you're looking at the number of a contract, and we saw the manipulation with the COMEX and I mean, they're trading multiple contracts per 1 ounce of gold or 1 ounce of silver. And then you had Shanghai, which was a total different price measured in dollars than over in the U.S., which was like, okay, that's interesting that you have two different prices of the same metals, over in Shanghai versus in the U.S. And so I appreciate you to highlighting that. You mentioned like the digitization of many of these assets, and I know before we kind of discussed like the stablecoin legislation and many of these, I guess it's called tokenization of many of these assets. And so any developments there that you think people should be aware of? Like, and I know it got passed and there was some kind of back and forth about some of the legislation here recently, but just curious in your thoughts.
Yeah, it's whatever happens in a really short term piece is not to me as relevant as the overall trend. And so regardless of the laws being passed over here, look over here, they're building the whole infrastructure. So these laws will get passed, and look at how much money that these corporations are throwing at the government, those that are trying to get reelected. And it doesn't matter whether it's Democrats or Republicans, although Republicans have a huge, the amount of money that is coming from lobbyists from these corporations to have influence on the laws. This is not a government that is for the people, by the people, and for the people. Mm-hmm. This is a government, and it's been that way. So I'm not saying this administration. I'm saying government's job is to legalize the theft of the corporations. And when we converted freaking corporate debt into money, you don't believe me? Pull a bill out of your wallet. What does it say? It says it's a note. Well, what's a note? A note is a debt instrument. When they allowed that, this is just more of the same, giving the more and more power. We have to take our power back. If we do, honestly, do you want Amazon in your brain with AI telling you what you're going to buy and what you're going to do and blah, 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 blah? That's what's coming if we allow it. Mm-hmm. And we have to allow it. We can stop it. We can say no. And that's what my fight is, to get sound money back in the system again. Because when it's redeemable, the public has the power. I don't like what you're doing, whoever is elected. Okay, give me my gold back. What gold does is it forces fiscal responsibility and puts limitations around them. What the digital economy does is it takes any limitations away, because right now in this current system that is debt-based, and that debt is so high, it doesn't matter whether it's governmental, corporate, or individual, that is simply not payable. But this next system that they have in mind, remember, what justifies money? When we were on the metal standard, it was based on how much could be pulled out of the ground. There was a finite. What did it cost to pull it out of the ground? And then that energy is held. So particularly with gold, since it's indestructible, all the energy and effort that went into pulling this out of the ground is stored right in this little coin right here. Stored energy. I could take this gold, melt it down, put it into jewelry form. Oh, well, this is probably closer, right? Put it into, or any other form, electronics, et cetera, et cetera. So this energy is stored. With the tokenization that you're referring to, that honestly is about bringing more capital into the banking system so that they can leverage more and they can gamble more, because that's what the whole thing has become, just a big, huge casino. But they're gambling with yours and my life. And that is not okay with me. You want to do it over here with what you've worked so hard to create? Rock and roll hoochie coo. That is entirely up to you. But you're gambling with my children's future, with your children's future. We have to decide whether or not that's okay. And I'm telling you right now, for me, not okay.
Yeah.
And how do you battle it?
Yeah, that's true. Curious of your thoughts on this tokenization. I mean, it just adds a whole nother level of like counterparty risks. I mean, what are you looking at, like tokenized gold? I mean, right now like if you own stocks, your stock certificates are like, I guess, tokenized. Like people don't even get the actual certificates anymore. I mean, they're looking at doing housing, with I guess at some point housing deeds or something of that nature. It seems like there's like, in the effort of like making things convenient, like we're giving up a level of like, I guess, civil liberties or having access to those real assets in our hands.
Absolutely. And that's the way they always present it. I mean, oh my gosh, you have these gold and silver coins, they're so heavy, they'll pull your pants down. This little bill or a number in your phone, how much more convenient is that? But it also denigrates the value of the money, because when you work hard for something, it has more value than if it's given to you. And we all know that. It's kind of like human nature. I have a little story that kind of reminds me of that, because when I was first starting my urban farm and I was learning how to grow food, and I had these strawberries, and I found these 2 strawberry plants, and they had the most perfect strawberries on there. And every day I went out and I nurtured them and I babied them and I made sure that the berries weren't touching the dirt. And I mean, I put a lot of time and effort into these berries, and then they were perfectly ripe and they were gorgeous. And I decided to save these berries because my daughter and her husband at that time were coming over. And so for me, I put so much time and effort and energy into these berries that this was a huge gift, right? And so they came over and I took them out to where those strawberry plants were, and I was so happy and excited to give it to them. And I gently took those 2 strawberries off the plant and I presented that to them, and they grabbed it and threw it in their mouth like, oh, thanks, this was great. Now, I put a lot of value into those strawberries, and I know that it sounds funny, but that is the point, right? Yep. The level of effort that you put into something really means that if you get what you want, or as you're working on getting what you want, it has a lot of value. Like my work and showing up for me, today and all the shows and everything that I do, I put a tremendous amount of work and effort and love and care into this, right? So I'm always going to try and do it better. But how much easier is it to call somebody and say, here's some money, do what you think? Are they going to do what's in your best interest, or are they more likely to do what's in their best interest? And it was easy for them. How hard was it for you to work for that money?
Yeah, that's true. That is
how
totally
easy could you lose it? And what's the recourse? If it's this dropping stock market or a dropping currency, number one, that loss is hidden from you. You see it in inflation, right? You see it there and you go, I don't like this inflation. Well, what if I told you that inflation is not a monetary event? It is a fiat money event. So this inflation that we're all dealing with and this loss of affordability that we're all dealing with, we volunteered.
Yeah.
When we gave up our power, when we handed over the choices for the future to others, and then lost our ability to hold them accountable, is it any wonder that we have been used and abused our whole lives? They ain't stopping now. They want more. It's not about the money even. It's about the greed and it's about the power.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to make a choice in here, whether or not that's acceptable. If it's acceptable, and that's your choice, I can't tell you. If you find this acceptable, rock and roll hoochie coo. But if you don't, then you have to look in the mirror and you have to go, well, if not me, who? And if not now, when? And by the way, what? What can I as an individual do to make this world a better place and to take our power back? 3% of the population in sound money, we'd have some power because there's 1% that's ruling over us. Mm-hmm. But allowing the tokenization of all of our wealth, that is insanity. And you have to keep in mind, I have really strong feelings on this because I became a stockbroker in the 80s. And I remember at that time, all the talk was about how fabulous globalization was going to be. Well, I don't know. How'd that work out? And all the talk was about assets in-house. That's when they started the transformation, right? It was 71 Nixon took the gold away from the money. Then nobody had the ability to hold government's toes to the fire. Not even other governments. That's ridiculous. There's no accountability. And they're setting things up for their benefit against us. And that, frankly, pisses me off. I got paid as a stockbroker in the 80s. They paid me more if I could talk my clients into not taking possessions of the certificates, which you talked about just a couple minutes ago, right? Back in those days, you held your bond certificates, you held your stock certificates. First, they got rid of the bond certificates. You can't do that. And then they started whittling away. But if you volunteered to hold this I was with Shearson, you volunteered to hold it at Shearson in the account, which makes it so much more easy and convenient if you want to buy something, if you want to sell something. You don't have to deal with the certificates. I mean, you have to put them in your safe deposit box. I mean, don't worry. We got this covered. What that did was give them more equity, because once you make that deposit, it's in street name. It's not yours anymore. You're down at the bottom as a beneficial owner. But the big banks, they're the legal registered owners, not you, of that stock certificate or that bond certificate or ETF or any of those contracts. You are not the owner. And your perception as the owner is irrelevant in a court of law.
Yep.
But sound money, you hold it, you own it outright. And if the banks can get through tokenization, if the banks can tokenize those assets, because they're already more leveraged than they were in 2008. They need more assets. They need more assets so they could continue this leverage. That's why everything, why they want I mean, there's so much of real estate has been turned into products already, right? I mean, look at what happened in 2008 with the subprime. But the assets that are beyond their reach right now, if they can turn them into tokens and bring them into the system, that gives them more equity where they can trade. And it jeopardizes you. Because what they talked about, people hold their wealth on their phone. They have that phone with them all the time. Now, you've got the equity of your house on that phone broken down into itty-bitty digits. So let's say you have $100,000 in equity. And you're out and about and you see this boat that you decide that you want to buy. Oh, okay. Well, the boats, I'm just pulling numbers. Yep. 10,000, I got 100. I still have plenty of equity. And before you know it, or you go to the store and you don't have any cash over here and you've got to feed your children. Remember, right now in the U.S., 4 easy payments for people to feed their children every week scares the Hades out of me. But you've got that on your phone. Before you know it, you have spent all of your equity. And then what happens? Well, the WEF, you own nothing. And I'm not putting that next line in there because that takes us back to feudal times. So digital currencies, the whole infrastructure rails of everything, definitely not asking the public what they want, but manipulating the markets so that the stock market keeps melting up. Oh, that's where I want that space. I want those. It doesn't matter what they're worth. I mean, what is it? OpenAI, are they ever going to make a profit? They say no. I don't think they ever expect to make a profit. And yet somehow they're worth $3.4 trillion. How? How are they worth $3.4 trillion? Because that's the private equity amount that other companies like NVIDIA and all those guys in the closed loop are willing to give OpenAI so that they can buy. I mean, it's circular. It's incestuous. It's insane what's happening in that AI development and build out with those huge, large corporations. Because what they're doing is, I'm gonna loan you money. Now you can buy the chips from me. That'll look good on my books because it'll make it look like I'm making money. Except then I go back to you for more money. I mean,
yeah, it's all manipulation. So, Lynette, how much of it do you think is our responsibility? So, like in a free market. We're
not really in.
In the idea of a free market,
yeah, I like that.
We buy the products from these types of companies, right? That are doing the manipulation, that are doing the tricks and pulling the wool over our eyes. Also, I remember when I was watching an old speech from Milton Friedman, and he was talking about how the voters, have a responsibility because typically when there's any type of tax cuts or whatnot, like typically people want those or they want those free programs or whatnot, and they vote in those politicians that are going to advocate for those, which ultimately leads to like more money printing, more devaluation of the currency and things of that nature. And so like it seems like the average person has a responsibility in that. And, and sometimes we just get caught up in like the same kind of tricks and scandals of we champion a politician and we get behind them and then they get in office and they swindle everybody again. And it's like a repetitive cycle, like, and so it just seems like, we as the people, like we have a big responsibility in that too. And so I'm just curious in your thoughts on that.
We're 100%. We do have the responsibility. Putting that off on somebody else to have your best interest at heart probably doesn't really work that well because, to your point, people typically have their best interest at heart, and we're not having the kind of conversations that we need to be having, because it isn't all about me. If honestly, Darrell, if I only cared about myself, I'd be retired. I wouldn't be sitting on a beach somewhere. I'd be up in my bug out on a mountain.
Yeah.
But I feel that it's a huge obligation and a huge responsibility. Did I ever tell you my strawberry story?
Yeah.
I did?
Yeah.
Okay, well then I won't tell it again unless you want me to. But it really is about, when you ask me, do we have a responsibility? Because this was many years ago. I'll tell it anyway because it kind of answers your question. Many years ago, I was in a bad place emotionally, and I had no money, and I ended up going to France with a bike and a tent. And I had no money, so I was pretty much eating whatever I found along the side of the road, which were typically raspberries, occasionally an apple, and my very favorite was the wild strawberries. So it was toward the end of the trip, and being a female, there was something I thought I needed. And I was in a little village, and I think I had maybe 4 or 5 francs left. I mean, a couple dollars, that was it. It wasn't dollars and francs. And so I go into this little store, and it's a female proprietress. And so I said to myself, oh, good, she's going to understand. This is not going to be a problem. And so I went to get what I thought I needed, and it was like maybe 1 franc more than what I had. And I'm telling you, Frank has no money. But I had this great headlamp. So I walk up to the counter and I explain my circumstance. I could speak enough French at that point to be understood. And she wouldn't sell it to me. And I tried to barter my headlamp with her, and she wouldn't barter with me. And I just, I'm like, oh my God, I got all upset, and I'm passing judgment on her. And then I go, you know what? You got plastic, you got toilet paper, you can deal with this. This is not really that big a deal. Mm-hmm. You can't really judge her. That's not your job. All you can do is be true to who you are. I remember, at that point, I really was asking why I was even on the planet.
Yeah.
So off I go. A couple hours later, I go over this hill, and I see this massive field of wild strawberries. Those were my favorite. So I'm like, oh, yay. So I park my bike, and I climb up this little hill, and I eat my fill of strawberries, and I pack some in some plastic. That'll be my dinner that night. And I go, so I pack that, and then I look, and down the hill, I see this white car, and there are 2 people in there. And I thought to myself, why aren't they up here gathering these strawberries? Because this is the best thing you could ever eat. And so I did what was in my normal nature to do. I had my fill. I had my dinner set. So I picked a couple handfuls, and I went down to the car. And the woman was on the passenger seat, and she rolled down her window, and I said, would you like some wild strawberries? Now, I got to tell you, this was toward the end of the trip, and I was camping and bathing in streams, and I had 2 changes of clothing. So I'm not sure that I looked pretty good then, and I might not have even smelled so great. But, I offered her the strawberries, and she said to me, no, thank you, but would you like a cheese sandwich? Well, you did not find cheese on the side of the road. And I thought to myself, cha-ching, protein. And they had a picnic basket in their trunk, and they gave me the cheese sandwich, and I ate it. And she said to me, would you like a cool drink of water? Well, I would fill my water bottles up in the little artesian wells as I would go from village to village, but it would get warm. And I said, well, I would like a cool drink of water. Thank you. And so they gave me that. And then she said to me, would you like an apricot? Well, I love apricots. But you never found apricot trees along the side of the road, and I sure couldn't afford an apricot from a fruit stand. And so I said to her, I said, well, I would love an apricot, but why are you doing this? It's not necessary. I'm getting chills. I get chills every time I tell this story because it was a life-changing moment for me. That woman looked into my eyes like she was looking into my soul. And she said to me, you wanted to share what you have with us. We want to share what we have with you. Mm-hmm. And that's everything, Darrell. That is my entire reason why I work as hard as I do, because I do believe that it is every person's individual obligation to share the gifts that they have been given. Yep. It is not an accident that I was born into the family I was born into, that I had my Uncle Al that taught me about hard assets, that I went into banking and I became a stockbroker early in the evolution of everything. It's not an accident that I was born in 1954 and got to live through taking the silver out of our system. I remember that. I was there. Or when they took the gold out of our system in 71. Did I understand any of that at that time? Of course not. But I needed to have that understanding. And that is one of the things that here at Zang International that I'm doing, is trying to future-proof this company. Mm-hmm. And by doing that, it's the one thing that I love the most, maybe even that I'm the most proud of, is the level of diversity that we have here in ages, in everything, because we all come together and we have conversation and we don't agree on everything. And guess what? That's okay. But everybody is bringing their gifts, and that makes us a lot stronger as a whole. Yep. I have to tell you, do I believe in gold and silver? 100%. That I don't buy stocks or bonds or any of that anymore. I will in the future, I'm sure, once we're over and through this next transition. Mm-hmm. But the biggest and most important thing that I believe that I'm doing is bringing community together so we can have discourse. Cults, there's only one way to think. Community is diversified, and that's what makes the community so important. That's what gives us our ability to take our freedom back. Mm-hmm. And stop giving it away. And I'm sorry I'm on a soapbox today.
No. That's really good. I appreciate you sharing that story with us. And that was a strawberry story you didn't share earlier, so that was a different one.
Okay.
The one you shared first was about you putting the work into your own strawberry garden.
Oh that's true. Oh, you got both strawberry stories today. You're right. I didn't even think about that.
Yes. So I really appreciate that, because, we can't do this alone, mm-hmm. and you're going to need somebody at some point, and even for us hard money folks that are like, hey, we need to make sure we have, you talk a lot about like the security, the barterability, mm-hmm. And community and many things of that nature. I actually just started building a community. I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and so I've been building a community there with people, and it's been beautiful just to see like the like you mentioned, the diversity, but then also like coming together for like a common purpose of like building each other up, and such. And so, and I think that's very key. And that's something that's missing. I mean, right now we're very fragmented. We have, as in the United States, but in other places in the world where you have like these kind of breakdowns, as Ray Dalio talks about the breakdowns of like mm-hmm. the social orders and political orders and things of that nature. And those have a lot of social implications and consequences. Yeah. And so we definitely need to be there for each other. So I want to just touch a little bit on the Federal Reserve. Mm-hmm. So I see you have the book Fed Up right there. Yeah. Ron Paul wrote End the Fed. And the Federal Reserve has created a lot of damage that many people are experiencing today. I mean, kids are getting out of college, they can't, find a job, affordability issues, the devaluation of the currency and such. I mean, a lot of issues have come out of the Fed, and so now we have a new Fed chair, Kevin Warsh. He has some ambitious goals or things of that nature, and so I'm just curious in your thoughts on him and the Fed in general.
Well, I think the Fed is not necessary, but they have been legalized. I think that Warsh is in a very challenging position because they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't, right? If they raise rates, then how do you control the inflation? You're going to see another spike in the inflation, which we're going to see even if they keep rates where they are. I mean, which is what they decided to do from this most recent meeting, is not do anything. But inflation is running hot again. Why is inflation running hot? Because they did so much of this that, quite honestly, since 2008, all of that money, it's been an easy money policy. And the Federal Reserve, even though they were allowing the runoff of that balance sheet until reasonably recently, right, they can't. No matter what they do, when they lower rates, that'll speed the rate of inflation up. But look at how much money has to be created to fund all of this build out that these corporations want to do. So when you're looking at the Federal Reserve is a private corporation. Their job is to support the corporations, not the public. They don't do anything in an effort to make it better for the public. Their job is to regulate the rate and speed of that inflation. And the problem is, and where we are right now, is that we're at the very end. So it doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter what Kevin Warsh does. Not one person is going to turn this around. The only thing that the Federal Reserve can do, honestly, at this point, is try and engineer some level of controlled demolition. But demolition has to happen. People need to understand that. There's no way out of it. And the reason why it has to happen, not my opinion, just a fact, is because we're told that's what's going to justify the new money creation is purchases and debt. Well, if the debt is already up at the level that nobody can afford, and you've got the consumer also debt ridden, so it's the government they can keep borrowing, but there's the government that is overweight in debt, the corporations and the individuals. Well, if that's the case, then how do they create new money? If consumers can't shop, which is supposed to be a justification to create it, because they've got too much debt, that's a problem. If the government can't grow or the corporations can't grow, I have a phenomenal soundbite that I pulled actually yesterday from Bloomberg, where they were talking about these mega IPOs and all of the necessary build out on a global basis for the data centers and to generate energy. And she said it just so beautifully that they have to create this money and also pull, this isn't exactly the quote, so don't hold me to this, but it was, they have to pull the money from wherever they can get it, and they have to create the money to do all of this build out. Well, if you're already at a level where you can't pay it, and this is a big deal because those mega IPOs, they used to use their cash flow to fund stuff. Now they're not doing that anymore. And their cash flow, their free cash flow is shrinking pretty substantially. And they're taking on all of this new debt. Well, you got to get rid of the debt. In order to grow even more, you're going to have to deal with the debt that's out there. How do you do that? Well, hyperinflationary depression. That's how you do it. That's how they always do it. And that's how they're doing it this time too.
Yeah. So in that type of event, I mean, obviously, if you have real money, sound money, if you're, focused on building community, barterability, having security, food, water, things of that nature, you can typically fare well in that. I'm sure, right?
Exactly. Darrell, I've had so many over the years. They don't do it too much anymore, maybe because the property looks so much better. But I'm not a gardener or farmer by nature. That's like not, every once in a while it's nice. I like to be outside. But when Lehman went out in 2008, and remember, that was my alma mater. That's where I was a stockbroker. When it went out in 2008, 100% I knew that the old system died. And then it was not a coincidence that Bitcoin was born in 2009, January of 2009, when quantitative easing was born in March of 2009. That was the new system. I saw it pretty quickly after it came out. I think Bitcoin was like at $7 when I first came across it. I think that was in 2009. And when I saw that, I said, oh, that's the new system. And how do you get the eyes? You let it go. So that was about creating a system that, well, this is my physical representation of a Bitcoin. What color is it? Gold. Looks an awful lot like that, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Perception management. They want you to think that these cryptocurrencies and blockchain is irrefutable. Yeah. But I'm not an engineer. I do not know how to write code. I don't know how to read the code that's written. When they created this system, they knew, their words, not mine, not one man in a million understands inflation. Well, they have inflated officially, go on the FRED purchasing power chart, we're below 3 cents now. Below 3 cents officially. Although it's been going back and forth. It's kind of weird.
That's pretty depressing.
And you can say, oh, la, 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 I don't want to hear it, but you're still going to be impacted by it, right? So you asked me about the Federal Reserve. The problem is that there is no purchasing power left to inflate away. So if we go into a fully digital system, central bank's words, so Federal Reserve words, once everything is digital, there are no limitations to how low we can push interest rates, which means negative rates. Well, what do negative rates mean? Well, they tested it in 2009. That attacks your principal. Okay, but you see, inflation is invisible. So the other thing that the central bank says is, if you give us digital currency, we'll guarantee that there will not be any more inflation. Why? Because with dollars, the paper, this is a debt instrument that does not pay or charge interest. So, but it still puts limitations on how low they can go. You go into the digital realm, because this is what? 1.00, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe on some things they'll go out another digit. But when you go digital, they can take that string out so much further so that even though it's happening, you can't see it.
Yeah.
Which was the goal of changing the interest rates up and down. It's not, were you going to fight this inflation that, after all, they were creating, central banks? It is, can we do this at a level that people do not change what they do? Rather, they take on debt to try to maintain a standard of living. That's what they refer to as price stability. Now, you and I would say that gallon of milk stays the same. That's got a stable price. But the definition, and, when you asked me about Kevin Warsh, I listened to him before he, when he was positioning himself. And he said he was going to make a lot of changes at the Federal Reserve because he had a completely different definition of price stability. So my ears perked up because price stability, that term, is a big deal to me. And you know what he said? He said it's inflation at a low enough level that nobody changes their normal spending patterns. That doesn't sound different. So anybody can blah, blah, blah. They can say whatever they want. But he is in, I would not want to be Fed chair. He is, and his job is really, quite honestly, to oversee the transition into the digital system. That's his job. Just like it's President Trump's job, he's a change agent. His job is to create a big enough crisis that the public just accepts the next iteration. My job is to educate. It is not an accident that I did all of those things my whole life. It was fate. This is the mission and why I was put on this planet. Not one little doubt about that for me. Mm-hmm. My job is to help educate people so that they can make choices that actually puts their best interest first and takes the power away from these people that do not have your best interest at heart.
Yep.
Why would we allow them to have that power? I say let's take it away.
Yeah, so let's do it together with how we're doing with our educating of the masses and such. So if any of the audience are interested in Zang International, what kind of services do you all provide? Plug the audience.
Wow. Okay. Well, we are definitely, everything we do is with the physical metals itself. But our favorite thing to do, quite honestly, besides the education, and we provide lots of that all over the place, YouTube, TikTok, X, LinkedIn, all over the place. But we have a sound money strategy that's based on those patterns that we see every single time a currency goes away. And there's over 4,800 of them, so there's lots of data. And so we look to what do you need within all of those 8 mantra pieces to secure your standard of living. And then we set up your goals first. So we secure your standard of living. We make sure that any wealth that you've managed to accumulate that's intangible is appropriately diversified with the physical metals. And then we put you in a position to sustain your standard of living. Because when one currency, government debt-based currency, dies, another one is born. Gold and silver are the bridge to maintain your purchasing power to get you from one system into the next system. The community also provides that surety, and it is critically important. But so we support all of that, and that's what we do. We're here to be of service.
All right. Well, yeah, I appreciate you plugging the audience with that. Be sure to go check out Zang International. And Lynette, thank you for your time, spending that with us, sharing your story, sharing your wisdom, and I look forward to having you back.
Are you in the mood for strawberries yet? I think I'm going to have to have some tonight. I hope there are some on my plants.
I say the strawberries are good. I love strawberries. So they actually used to call me Darrell Strawberry growing up, the baseball player. Like, yeah, that's another thing I wanted to put out there. So yeah, appreciate that. Well, take care and look forward to staying in touch.
Absolutely, anytime.